Several weeks ago, I had my first inspection and the inspector failed both my electrical and plumbing installation. I did manage to correct all the items on his list as it was fairly simple except for one thing that I had left aside and figured that I would tackle on later. The infamous plumbing leak test. And you're just not gonna believe how many leaks I found in my cabin. So first thing first, I actually had to extend my vent stack to actually go through the roof. I mean, that's something that I had postponed for a while, and well, it was about time to get it done. So, using a plumb bob actually was very useful to find exactly where the hole should be located. And let me tell you that making a hole through your roof of your cabin is absolutely nerve wracking.
There is light. There is light. That is so scary.
So I don't want to spoil you about what's going to happen, but definitely think twice about the length of what that pipe needs to be, because I really didn't think too long about this. So, and I also went ahead and glued it completely without checking what it was looking like from the outside. You'll have to get one of these boots, but you also have to make sure to cut the holes that matches the size of your pipe. And it took me a serious minute to figure out a way to cut through this thing.
Oh là là, mais c'est impossible à couper. Ah, mais je te jure.
Eventually I figured it out. Using a piece of wood against it makes it a lot easier, trust me. From the roofing installation, I still had a bunch of butyl tape laying around, so I decided to use a few rows of butyl tape all around the base of the boot. And I was going to use self-tapping metal roof screws to get the job done. My running shoes actually stick the most to this metal roof. Well, kind of.
I'm just going to slide.
I don't know if that's best practice, but I went ahead and put a generous bead of sealant all around the pipe. The boot then goes directly over the plumbing pipe, and then you can actually push the base down, which is fairly flexible, to really match all the contour of your metal roof and all the different size ribs.
Oh là 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 là, mais non! So you can't see what's happening here, but the screw pretty much rolled my butyl tape freaking pastry.
And then you can really kind of go crazy with the screws. I mean, I've seen examples and people put them like, I don't know, like 3/4 of an inch from each other. You're really trying to make this thing as watertight as possible. And, you know, if it's going to be ugly, whatever, no one's going to see it up there. So the issue is that per code, I'm pretty sure that the pipe needs to stick out by at least 6 inches above the boot. So I decided to cut it off so I would be able to push it up through the boot and have something that looked better for the inspector. Went back and glued a couple of couplers. I mean, it sure is ugly, but it works. Then I had myself a little sealant putty where I went nuts with it. I put it over the screws. I put it at the base of the pipe. I mean, really anywhere that water could get in, I wanted that protected. I decided to go ahead and start leak testing my water lines first. So what I had to do was connect the hot and cold water line. I mean, that's just a temporary measure so that everything is connected together, and that allows me to pressure the entire system at once instead of like doing the separation between the cold and the hot water. So the logic is easy. You have to go back and plug every line you have available, and then that includes obviously the shower valve and the shower head as well. So thankfully they make things that allow you to make that possible. But honestly, I had to do extensive research. I didn't even know those things existed in the first place. To perform this leak test, they're going to need some sort of gauge so that you can actually pressure the system, see what kind of pressure you're applying, and seeing if the system is sustaining the pressure. Obviously, if the pressure is dropping, that would mean you have a leak. So I decided that I would leave the water line for the toilet uncapped, and that's where I attached my valve, and that's where I would pump the system full of air.
Ah, I hear something.
The first 2 leaks were extremely straightforward. It was actually a couple of clamps that were never fully attached. Once fixed, I was able to pump the system again and see if I had more leaks, and it looked like the pressure was dropping, and this time it looked like it was coming from the shower valve, as you can obviously hear. Once the leak is found, you can actually go back and depressurize the whole system so that you can safely take it apart and see what's going wrong. So it seems like the O-ring on the pressure cap was actually the one giving giving me trouble. So I tried to place it back to see if it worked better this time. Pumped the system back and still had the issue, unfortunately.
Oh là là.
By taking a closer look, it was clear that the O-ring was actually twisted. So I completely removed it, placed it back, and this time really hoped that it would work properly. The challenge now is that the more you advance in this leak test, the more difficult it is to locate where the leak is coming from. So now I'm still experiencing a leak, but it's almost imperceptible to hear it. It doesn't make any noise. So what do you do to actually figure it out? Well, using soapy water is really the only way you can really get to that next level and finding those smaller leaks.
Ça va être impossible. Comment tu veux que je trouve ça?
So it really felt like it was going to be impossible to locate anything until...
Ah! No way! Guys, look at this. It actually works. Look at this. It's bubbling. So we have definitely something happening here.
That one turned out to be fairly easy as well. It was just a matter of getting this connection tighter, and that's hopefully all it took to make it work. So now is unfortunately when the serious stuff is gonna start happening. So unfortunately, I still had a micro leak. I mean, it took forever to go back down. And so here I was just like spraying all over the place, trying to locate that leak up until the moment I did find it. And oh my goodness, it was actually at the shower valve at one of those screw-on connection. And that one would turn out to be an absolute nightmare. The main issue, as you can see, is that I have absolutely no leverage to tighten this thing.
Oh putain, c'est impossible.
This is probably far from being the best way to do this, but I started using a piece of wood to brace it against the exterior wall, and that gave me enough leverage that I would actually be able to get it tighter. But to my surprise, there were still bubbles coming out of this connection, which kind of drove me nuts. So I kept going just as much as I could, even though the more I was going, the more I felt that I was about to damage everything.
Ah, il y a encore des bulles, hein? Il y a encore des petites bulles.
And this led to an epic battle between myself and a shower valve.
Oh, mais c'est pas possible! Non, mais sérieusement, là, c'est quoi ce bordel? Still bubbles. Non, mais c'est pas possible. Oh là là, mais j'y crois pas! On va tout casser, hein. Ça va se finir comme ça. Ah, oh. Mais c'est tellement serré, là. Qu'est-ce que tu veux de plus? Yeah, I think that's it. I'm at the max I can do. And this stupid stuff is still bubbling, which is driving me nuts. Look at this. It's a bubble party. I think the bubbles are kind of gone.
It was hard to believe, but I think that I had finally defeated the shower valve.
Yeah. This one has seen better days.
Well, I did destroy the valve bracket while doing so, but unfortunately, every battle leaves a few casualties. I did some final check. I was really wanted to see that I hadn't done any collateral damages, and it looked like it was all good to go. I did try numerous times to bend that bracket back into place, but it turned out that it was really impossible, so I ended up getting a replacement for it because obviously you want the bracket to be in good shape so that the valve sits properly against the framing. So here was the time for the final test. I did bring it to 80 psi, but it turned out that it actually needs to be 100. But I did these things properly where you have to do it for 15 minutes.
Oh, I think I hear something. All right, look at this. It looks like we're good. But yeah, we're good to go, so we're good with the water lines. Now it's time to finally test the drain lines, and this time I'm gonna fill them up with water.
Have you ever wondered how much I have spent so far on this cabin, money-wise and time-wise? If you would like to know, I do send a monthly newsletter out with a budget breakdown and the number of hours I have spent on this cabin project. Just go to my website, enter your email. You will receive the free cabin plans, but you will also automatically be added to my emailing list, and you will start receiving the newsletter. You're welcome.
So to do a proper water test on the drain lines, well, you have to cap them all off. So they sell little caps which are really inexpensive, and you can simply glue them to your plumbing. I mean, as you can see, I purposely extended everything so that I will put the cap on, and then later on I'll be able to just
cut it off. As a quick reminder, that's what my plumbing looks like under the cabin, and you can see that it goes directly into the ground, and then I have a buried sewer line that goes all the way under the cabin, and that goes directly to the septic tank, which is buried somewhere down there on the other side of the cabin.
If I'm gonna fill this up with water, how do I stop the flow? How do I plug this line at some point? Well, that's when this little test bowl comes into play. So I'm supposed to drop this, and you can inflate it and block the line that way.
So I have a clean out about 10 feet uphill from my sewer tank, and that's where I was going to place that bowl. And these things are pretty straightforward. You can just hook it up to a bike pump and pump it up.
Yeah, nice. Look at this. So I'm gonna have to kind of get in there somehow and do this. This is not gonna work.
The challenge is that obviously there's not a lot of room to work with.
But I don't know I'm gonna be able to inflate it in this position. So what if I put it down like, what about this? Does that work? All right, check this out. I don't know, you probably can't see anything, but I'm at 40 PSI. All right, so see, that's the, the pump. And so it's like right up there and it's completely inflated. So now we just gotta fill it with water and see what happens. Hope for the best.
Luckily, my house is not far, but I did have to buy an extension hose to be able to run all the way to the cabin.
Ah, that sounds like a terrible idea. Terrible idea. Man, that would be so sad to hurt myself at this point. After everything I've done. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, be smarter than me. You touched yourself or something. That wasn't smart.
All right, let's fill this up. This might take a minute.
Yeah, this is gonna take a while, so I decided to go back down so I would do it a little safer.
Yeah, this is sketchy. Don't do this at home. Do not do this at home.
Okay, I know this is not the best way, but don't judge me. That's all I had available at the time, so I just tied it to a tree on the other side of the cabin and at least had something I could hold myself with.
This is unbelievable. How much water are we talking about? I'm gonna empty my well by the time we're done with this. Ah, so much better to have a rope. Who would have thought? All right. Okay, we got some leaks. No stupid clean out. All right, I think this is getting better.
So the first reflex that I had, which is not a good one, is, well, if it's leaking, try and make it as tight as possible. Which is silly because you could easily break something.
Still leaking. All right, so turns out I was supposed to put Teflon tape in those clean out, which I didn't. So it's probably why they're gonna keep leaking and there's no point of trying to get them tighter.
Well, would you look at that? I got it so tight that I can't even unscrew it. I mean, you probably saw that coming.
I swear I'm gonna break this thing. Like, it's already so tight in there. Oh, putain. Allez! We're just gonna wait here with this calming waterfall sound. Oh, so calming. There we go. That wasn't too bad.
So I went back and I was very, very, very generous with the Teflon tape. I don't know how many times I rolled that thing up, probably 10 times. But that's what it took to actually make a connection that felt like it wouldn't leak. The next day was unfortunately horrendous weather. It was actually raining and it got super muddy. But here I was trying to get this done, and so unfortunately I had to still go on the roof. Thankfully I found a way to kind of block the water hose so that it would still fill up without me standing next to it. And then I eventually got the whole thing filled up with water.
This is not the best day to be doing this. And look at all this mess. All right, let's go check if we have any leaks.
All right, so we have a problem here. I found that there's a leak. This connection here is leaking, and so if you can see,
Unfortunately, I had no other choice than cutting that piece off and starting it over. Thankfully, it was just a matter of like installing a few couplers and then time to fill up again, because obviously I had to remove all the water before I could redo the plumbing. Since I left the garden hose hooked up and filling everything up, what I would do is actually listen into the pipe, and I would know when was time to go back on the roof to cut the water off because it was full.
final test, and it looks like we have no leaks anymore. So we're good to go.
The last thing to do was to remove that test bowl, which was still in my sewer line,
close everything off. So I don't have much footage of that, but the inspector did visit the property while there was still water in the sewer line. Technically, you're supposed to have a 10-foot head of water, so I was ready to extend the pipe over the roof, but the inspector did not ask for it, so I just left it the way it was. He was also able to inspect the pressurized water line, and he pretty much okayed everything. He okayed my electrical, my plumbing, and my framing, and allowed me to move forward with the rest of the construction. So I'm putting on the screen here the link to the next episode. We will go back to some electrical work. I still have a few things to finish, because keep in mind that everything needs to be finished in these walls before I can go ahead and move with the next step, which will be to install all the insulation in this cabin. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.